happy weekend. Hopefully you guys are having a good one out there. And if you are not having a good day, I do hope that it gets better for you soon. We have a guest appearance with us for this episode. We have the lovely Reggie.
Hello. Hi.
So this is going to be our first episode, like I mentioned previously, on the monthly, I'm going to call them historical highlights, okay? I kind of like that title going. So, like I said, every month, right, it's dedicated to either a culture or a certain category of people, let's say, and May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So, to honor that, for this episode, we have Reggie coming onto the show as a Filipino-American, and I want her to share some of her experience growing up Filipino-American, some of her insight into the culture, and I just kind of want this episode to sort of be like a snapshot, Filipino culture 101, if you will. And we are also going to be talking about a Filipino icon that maybe you've never heard of. I hadn't, to be honest. So, but he's got a really cool story. So I wanted to share that. And yeah, so let's get into it.
Yes. So, I was born here in the States. Both of my parents immigrated from the Philippines back in I think 1992, early 90s. My mom, I believe, became a natural citizen after living here for a while, and my dad didn't become a U.S. citizen until maybe about 5 or so years ago.
Nice, okay.
I've been raised here in the States, in California, for all my life. I guess my parents definitely tried incorporating a lot of different Filipino cultural aspects, especially when it came to religion. However, I will say I am not religious.
Gotcha.
At least not openly. For them, I'll play that role. But let's see. I unfortunately am not fluent in Tagalog as much as I wish. I can understand a good amount, especially with contextual clues. But yeah, that's me so far.
Nice. Okay, so they did raise you when you were growing up. They tried to still sort of maintain a good amount of their Filipino culture, just in the day-to-day.
Especially culturally with food. I do know that they did try teaching me Tagalog. I guess when I was younger, I understood and spoke more, but as I started school and my parents were also very busy with work because living that American dream of trying to really provide, I just got more exposed to English eventually and just kind of stopped speaking Tagalog.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up the Tagalog part because I wanted to talk about that. So it was very interesting to me because apparently, I didn't know this until I kind of looked into it for this episode, but apparently there are dozens and dozens and dozens of different languages that they speak in the Philippines, but two, there's so many different regional dialects, but it's not just a slight change of tone or phrase or maybe spelling. It's even just Tagalog, apparently there's several versions of that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Especially, right? And I think the more modern, I would say, or what they use now a lot is just Taglish, a mix of Tagalog and English. Because I know from in the Philippines and from friends that were from the Philippines, English was very heavily taught to them. But yeah, actually speaking of the other languages, my mom knows Tagalog, but my dad actually knows both Tagalog and another language called Ilocano, because it was based on where he's from or his region.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So one of my old coworkers, sweetest lady in the world, Miss Josie, she taught me one phrase in Tagalog I think it's Tagalog actually. Maybe it's a dialect version. I don't know. But very helpful. I think, she told me it means give me a kiss. Maybe it doesn't actually mean that. I don't know. It's halikan mo ako. Does that sound right?
That sounds right, yeah. Because halika means come here. And then moko, it's face.
Nice.
I think is my rough translation if I remember. But yeah, I think that sounds about good.
Love it. I love it. You know what else kind of like, I was like, ooh, this is going to get me a little tilted. So I was looking up, I don't know why I was looking it up, but I was looking up something on Google Translate. And then I was like, wait, why is Tagalog not listed?
Oh,
And then I was losing my mind. I'm like, wait, I swear the name of the language is Tagalog. Like, what the heck? And then our friend Erica, I was FaceTiming her at the time, and she's like, oh no, it's under Filipino. And I'm like, what the, like, Filipino isn't the language. That's, like, that would be the ethnicity. What the heck? It's just like, yeah, that's
right.
how Google Translate is. It's the same thing for Chinese. So it says under Google Translate, it's Chinese simplified and Chinese traditional. They don't even have Mandarin or Cantonese listed. And I'm like, why? I cannot even, I don't know. Do you know why that is? That seems like a whole can of worms we could probably uncover at
Right.
some point,
Honestly,
but
I have no idea. But I always like saw that and I always wondered why Filipino. I don't know if it's just because I don't know. It's weird. I feel like with the Philippines, it's people know about it, but not know about it enough.
mm,
And it's so interesting, especially with like social media, that how much like Filipino culture and the Philippines' awareness, I guess, is like somewhat increasing, or at least from my point of view, from what I've seen.
mm-hmm.
Even with just like the explosion of ube like appearing in all these different types of foods when it's like been something
Yes.
that's so known for a while for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But yeah, but with Filipino, I never really knew.
see, I don't know. I'm like, that seems a little janky, but I don't know. Like, why wouldn't they just list Tagalog? I don't know. It's beyond me. What do I know? So let's dig into food next. So food is a big, from what I've seen, like food is a pretty big cultural thing too for you guys. Kind of like the Korean community where it's like you bond over food. It's like a thing, right? Um, when
Definitely.
when I think of like traditional, I guess kind of stereotypical Filipino food, I immediately think of lumpia, which I do love. I miss lumpia, honestly. That's the only thing in Ohio, like I don't know, maybe I need to do a little bit more digging, but they don't really have Filipino food around here. But yeah, I think of lumpia and then I think of chicken adobo.
Oh yeah, those are pretty the two, I guess I would say most popular or well known dishes of Filipino culture. I guess it's funny because there was a phase where I was so tired of lumpia. Like,
Mm.
like if I see it at parties, like it was the one thing I'd avoid.
Oh.
Um, but then I mean now, like as I'm older, it was more of I don't know. I don't know if it was just I was tired of it, because that there were other things that I wanted to eat, or I was like, it's just I don't know, it's just lumpia to me. But I mean now too, it's like I think because I haven't eaten it in a while, and so from time to time when I do, I'm like, oh, this hits. Like I see why it's popular. I see why
Mm-hmm.
people love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure with food, it's such a big thing. It's like a way for almost I guess a love language, I would say. Just being able to share food, especially culturally. I think it's really funny too when like especially with my parents when they learn that my non-Filipino friends have tried some of these other Filipino dishes, they get so excited
Oh.
because they think like, oh, people would like eat it, or like yeah, I remember when our friend Erica was telling about how her family kept asking whether her husband, like, oh, is he gonna be able to eat this? Is he gonna be able to eat this? Like in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really fun to just see the different recipes and different things that, especially my family has, I guess, shared throughout the years. Although it's funny because my family, or specifically my mom, does not like to share recipes with anyone outside of our family.
Oh, she like
So
gatekeeps it. She's like, nah, this is
yes,
our recipe.
yeah, and I think it's because like her sister also told her like tell no one like
Oh.
it's ultimate secret. So my mom is known for this dish called palabok. It's like a different version of pancit, but it has many different varieties. Where it's for us we do it with these thicker noodles or thicker rice noodles. But it has like this type of sauce. It's like an orange colored sauce. It consists of like chicharron on top or these fish plates called tinapa. And for us, you could add any protein really, but that recipe is where my mom's like, don't share it with anyone, but she's well
Ooh.
known for it because she brings it to potlucks and stuff, and everyone just always loves it. So I've made it a couple of times because I finally learned how to make it, and every time everyone always asks me for the recipe, and I feel bad because I have to shut it down, but it's I do know that there are some other like people that enjoy sharing recipes, things
Hmm.
like that too.
That's kind of cool though in a way. It's like your specific family secret. Like, I don't know. I think that's kind of cool, you know? If there was one food, one Filipino food that you like if that was the only food that you could ever eat again for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Ooh, that's hard. Let's see. Honestly, I think it's split between three things or three foods. One of them would be sinigang, which is like this tamarind soup-based stew
Ooh.
that has a ton of any vegetables like long beans or long string beans, okra, daikon, and some people put taro in it. Um, and you could put any meat or fish or protein, and it always hits so good. Great for cold winter, like cold seasons too.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I bet.
and I know actually I've heard that some areas of the Philippines put watermelon in it. Never tried it, but it sounds
Ooh.
interesting. Another one is called kare kare, which is a peanut butter based stew. We have a lot of stews apparently, but um, that is usually involving like with oxtail, tripe, what else? Bok choy, and all these other vegetables as well. Or dinuguan, which is I'm not exactly sure translation, but English translation we always call it chocolate meat, just because it's like this dish cooked with pork's blood, and it's really dark, like almost looks like I guess chocolate or equivalent to like Mexican cuisine of mole.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, but those are my top three that I feel like if I could eat any of those for the rest of my life, I would be fine.
Yeah, those sound good. They sound very like hearty and like satisfying. Do you do a lot of Filipino cooking or does it just kind of depend?
Surprisingly, no. I think for me, I, I wouldn't say I would be intimidated, but I think it's more of there's a lot of different, I guess, ways or meats that I've never tried cooking before, especially with pressure cookers. What I've seen,
Oh,
and pressure cookers kind of terrify me.
dude, yes. When I was way too young, because my mom used to can a lot and like do all that stuff. And when I was way too young, she was like, hey, I have to go do something. Watch the pressure cooker. If it goes, and it was like, to me, it was like the smallest range of temperature. But she's like, if it goes over this temperature, do this, because otherwise it's gonna blow up and you'll explode the whole house. And if it drops below this temperature, do XXXXXY, and otherwise it's gonna blow up and the whole house will start on fire. And I was like, I am 8 years old. Why are you trusting me with this? And I remember being so stressed out. And ever since then, I'm like, don't put me near a pressure cooker. Like a rice cooker is enough when it starts whistling. I'm like, oh, here we go. This is gonna be the
Right.
end.
And like
Man.
I don't know, I think they use like that little whistling as to start the timer. Like my dad was like, yeah, once it starts doing that, like in 20 minutes you have to turn it off. And I was like,
It's too
okay,
much.
but
It's too much
oh
pressure for
god,
me.
literally.
Oh man, that's crazy.
But I think the one Filipino dish I know how to cook is sinigang because that one's easy enough and does not involve pressure cookers. Um, but surprisingly, yeah, I haven't really tried cooking Filipino dishes. Like I've tried cooking, like I know I tried making Korean dishes and obviously American stuff, but like Filipino is the one thing I haven't really done. And I think it's because like my mom's and I'm sure everyone's biased of this too, of like their own mother's cooking, but like my mom's cooking is like top tier to me when it comes to Filipino food. And I
Hmm.
feel like I just can't live up to it or like recreate it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because it's always like there's something missing and I don't know what it is. And I think too when I was younger and I would try to help in the kitchen, but I wouldn't really know how to do certain things, and my mom has a very particular way of doing stuff. She's like, oh, you're doing it wrong, just let me do it. So then I would be sent out of the kitchen.
Did we have the same mother? Like, what is, why does this sound so familiar? Yeah, it really is wild how food is like, they hold it so sacred, you know? And like, for me, like, it is intimidating to try and make something, because then I'm always like, okay, if it's not good, then, you know, it's like the food's all wasted or whatever, or then like they're like, no, it should have been done this way, and yeah. I don't know.
Right.
It's crazy. I was looking at some other like traditional things of the Filipino culture, and again, ignorant old me, I didn't know this was a thing, but I thought it was kind of cool. But you guys have like a debut birthday?
Oh, yep, the debuts.
Or debut, sorry.
At least that's how we say it. I'm pretty sure debut, or, yeah, it works. But yeah, for us, I know it's the 18th birthday for girls and 21st for guys. I've never seen, I guess, a big celebration for 21st birthdays for guys, though. That's interesting. Usually it's always just the 18th birthday for when girls turn 18.
Okay, so it's like a version of the quinceañera?
Yeah.
Okay. That's really cool. I always kind of wished that we had something like that for white people. Like, I remember when I was a teenager and we got to go to a few quinceañeras, and I'm like, man, this seems so cool. Like, they get this fancy dress, but I guess we have a Sweet 16, but it's not really the same, I feel like. I don't know. So I don't know if real people actually do this, but when I was Googling the debut, they said that the girls, like, the traditional symbolic thing or whatever is that the girl dances with the 18 most important men in her life.
Yeah.
Did you guys do that or no?
Yeah, we did. I personally didn't have a debut, but for the ones that I went, they had 18 roses and 18 candles.
Ooh.
So the roses were the 18 men in her life, whether it's relatives, friends, parent, and then the 18 candles, same thing, but it was for the 18 important women in her life.
Oh, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, so then the candles would give, they would give like a little speech, and then would give a gift to the debutante, so like something, it could be jewelry or something that's important or significant for them entering adulthood. And then yeah, the 18 roses would do a dance with the debutante, and I think whatever special song that they chose for a bit too.
That's so cool. I love like traditional stuff like that when it all is kind of symbolic of something, and there's, I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot of meaning to it. I always thought that was really cool.
For sure.
We won't get too deep into like the history of the Philippines, but with the Spanish taking over for that little bit, I read that there's a lot of like Catholic and Spanish influence too, and so a lot of those traditions will kind of have those ties, like first communion, baptism, things like that.
Yeah, very big with Catholicism, especially with my parents too. They were born and raised Catholic, so we definitely did have a lot of Spanish influence with that. Even our last names with a lot of different Filipinos. And I know there's sometimes a running joke of if you hear a certain last name and they're not sure, like either they're Filipino or they're Mexican. And there's actually a teacher that I worked with one time. Yeah, I work with autistic kids, and he asked me, "Are you Filipino or are you Mexican?" I was like, "Oh no, I'm Filipino." He's like, "Oh, okay, that's what I thought. I just wasn't sure."
Aww.
And my dad would also just kind of make jokes about it too, where I think we were going to go on a vacation in Mexico, and he's like, they're going to think that you're one of them, and they're going to start talking Spanish to you. And I was like, why would you say that? But yeah, I've seen, but with Spanish culture things too, or it's just very relatable I suppose. And that is because, yeah, we were heavily influenced during that time.
Gotcha. I think like the big takeaway that I saw just from the little bit that I was kind of looking into the culture and some of the traditions and stuff. I mean, the Philippines, there's a gajillion islands, but it's still like there's some decent size to it geographically. I think I saw it was like 13 times the size of Hawaii or something like that. Like it's pretty, for being islands, there is a good amount of land to cover, but still it's like there's a ton of diversity all across the islands. And so like you can go 30 minutes in any direction and it'll be like completely different. Like they cook food differently there and it's a different dialect, and it's just like there's a ton of little cultural pockets even just within the islands, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, it's so interesting to explore. I've only been to the Philippines once, and I would love to visit again just to see more of the stuff that they have. But even with, I remember learning like with the language that my dad speaks, Ilocano. I think even within their region, there's even many dialects within it. Where I think if was it like Western Ilocano and Eastern Ilocano, they have different words, different tones, and ways of speaking.
Dang.
And I compared North and South, and it was really cool to just learn about that too.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the pictures of you guys like on your trip, oh my God, it was beautiful. And I had a couple coworkers that went out there, and it just looked so gorgeous. It just looked like they went like parasailing and like all these like island hopping and stuff, and it just the water looked beautiful, and it was just it was gorgeous. I want to go out there eventually at some point.
It will be quite the time. You will probably be, or people will probably be amazed with how light your skin is, to be honest.
Dude, I believe it.
Yeah, there are definitely some regions of the Philippines where they prefer to even make their own like skin tone lighter. Like for my parents, like my mom's actually one of the lighter like tones, and then my dad and I are more the darker ones. And my mom would always try to give me like this papaya soap for like skin whitening and stuff. And I was like, I'm in a marching band. I'm gonna be out in the sun. It's not gonna happen. I like being dark. Like I'm fine.
Yeah, it's crazy how. I mean, it's like a Korean thing too. They're always like, oh, how pale can you get? Like, how bleached can you get your skin? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess for some people, they're going for the albino look. I don't know. I guess to each their own. So May is also Mental Health Awareness Month. So what better way to kind of pair the two, Filipino culture and mental health? You have a pretty strong background in this, Reggie. So your degree that you're about to graduate from, congrats.
Thank you.
So it's in marriage and family counseling, right?
Yes, with an emphasis on licensed professional clinical counseling. But essentially, yeah, with the aspects of mental health.
But then you also work with autistic children as like a what's the term, para-educator?
Yeah,
is that it? Okay.
In schools, yeah, we go by paraeducator. I've heard many different names. Some say aides, some say, I think my job title on my badge was classroom behavior assistant. Same thing with, I used to work in the homes before I started school, where we'd also provide home services, and that was assistant behavior specialist, and things like that.
That's so amazing.
But it's definitely a very interesting learning curve. It was a job I feel like I accidentally went into, but I ended up loving it, so it worked out.
Oh yeah, that's the best, when you just kind of stumble across those gems. That's amazing.
But oh yeah, mental health and Filipino culture. So
is it not a thing?
I want to say it's slightly improving, or it definitely can improve more, but it definitely, there is still that big stigma when it comes to mental health within the culture. I feel like with like this current generation, especially trying to advocate for mental health and, like mental safety, and it's it's definitely a learning curve for more older generations.
Mm-hmm.
I for sure remember where there was a time, I think my mom was watching like the news or watching something, and someone was being interviewed and they were talking about depression, and she was very kind of skeptical of depression. It was more of, I think, especially with older generations, they really think like it's maybe just people being, I won't say lazy, but I think because too that they immigrated and they've dealt with so many hardships, they felt like the hardships that people deal with now aren't comparable. And that it feels like it's a scapegoat or it's an excuse to blame it on mental health. Because to them, like, oh, I dealt with this, like, I feel fine. But also with a lot of our culture, I would say, as Asians tend to be a more of a collectivist type of culture where it's more about the whole family rather than individuality, and that everything that people do within the family is what's the best for the family. So when one thing, I guess, kind of shifts the equilibrium of the family, it's technically kind of swept under the rug, I would say. Or there's just so much with it. Because I feel like it also depends on gender, because especially with our culture, like, gender roles are very heavy. Like the whole perspective of what it means to be a man, and that bit of that whole masculinity thing with not really being able to express emotions a lot. And I don't really think I've seen my dad express a ton of emotions, or when he's like feeling frustrated and things like that. Or also for like women in our culture too, they were kind of taught to try to keep the peace a lot.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
so we had a ton of feelings to be suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I know with some other families or some older traditional things is that, especially the relationship between a parent and the child, sometimes when a kid wants to express their opinion, or if they just disagree with a certain thought, that was seen as, the kid is talking back, and then it would lead to like punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes like sometimes it's like we're crying because of an argument or something. There's this one question that was always so I've always hated being asked this question, where they would be like, why are you crying? Like, you don't need to cry. Like, stop crying. Like, why are you crying?
Ooh.
And it's like, why can't I cry? So sometimes it was seen that, crying is a form of weakness or something like that too. And because, we're always raised that everything we do is for the family, sometimes it just becomes such an enmeshed type system. We kind of start learning, I guess, what are some things that we have to set aside, even if it's something that we really need in order to keep the family peace. And it's so interesting now too, where I just finished my internship with my program and as like a trainee therapist. And surprisingly, when I first started, I had a lot of Filipino clients. And I think part of that was good to see is that they're getting help for it. Because, especially with a lot of, or the older generation, like, for things like, oh, this kid might have ADHD or bipolarism or whatever diagnosis, it was always seen as, oh, they're crazy. And if someone like outside of the family found out like, oh, that they were diagnosed with this, it would essentially damage the reputation of the family. So they always try to keep it like, they were always in denial about it. There's always them saying like, oh, there's nothing wrong with them, like it's nothing. Or they would just say, make up some type of excuse or push it under the rug. So unfortunately, like, they wouldn't get the treatment that they need or the help that they need, just to keep up that type of reputation that there's nothing wrong. Because I guess once they start getting help or treatment, then it solidifies that there's something wrong.
Yeah. It seems like it's maybe a lot of like socially they're trying to save face almost and like keep up an appearance that they're like the perfect family that has no issues and something
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yep, definitely.
Dang.
And yeah, and then it just affects a whole lot of stuff down the line too, where when it comes to like communicating, um, especially communicating needs or even setting boundaries. Like I'm guilty of this too, where I have such a hard time setting boundaries when it comes to my parents, just because I fear and I don't want to hurt them or hurt their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But like at that point too, I guess yeah, at that point too, like I'm also sacrificing my own mental like health in that regard, just so I could shield them or protect them from whatever may happen or whatever bad thing can result.
Yeah. Plus, I feel like it would be really hard, or maybe this would just be for me, but I feel like I would have a hard time in that situation maintaining, like, at my core, who I am as a person and, like, my sense of identity and my sense of self, because I feel like, I mean, shoot, I do have anxiety. I do have some of these things that I've worked with. And so if I wasn't able to openly acknowledge like yes this is something that I'm going through right now or this is something I'm working on, if I have to like deny that and be like nope, repress it, it's not a thing, it doesn't matter, blah blah blah, or if I was constantly trying to keep the peace in the family and I was constantly trying to put up this front of this is who I am and I'm perfect and I make no mistakes and yada yada, I'm the perfect daughter or whatever, I feel like I would just lose myself entirely.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that would be really hard for me.
Yep, for sure. And honestly, it's kind of harder too when like being the only child, especially
Mm,
since it kind of all the attention it falls on just one.
yeah.
Rather than with siblings, like having siblings could probably, I guess, help disperse the stuff. I would say, but yeah, I've also heard like from different people that I've talked to or different clients too, like those that do have siblings. Um, Another thing is, yeah, those roles of if they're the oldest sibling, then the parents, like especially culturally, like they put the responsibility on them. Like you have to take care of your younger siblings. You have to set the example. And so, like if the younger siblings aren't meeting the parents' expectations, the oldest tends to also get blamed or in trouble for that, for not setting that, I guess, example.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, it's just more layers piling on.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're the only child, then that's definitely a spotlight on you. So that's tough.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I'm thinking now that just kind of made me think of it. I feel like, and this very well could be a generalization, so please correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like all the Filipinos I've known, they've all been single children or they had like one sibling. Do Filipinos not normally have like big families? Is it normally only a couple kids? Or is that just
So
like a weird coincidence that the people I'm thinking of have all been only children?
I want to say it's a weird coincidence because from, I mean, usually like yeah, usually with all the other families I know, they usually tend to have big families, and I mean Filipinos are also kind of known for their big families. Um, But yeah, now thinking about like the mutual friends that we are the minority, I guess, where we don't really have a whole like huge family.
Yeah.
But typically,
They do the whole
it's a huge
Catholic baby
family.
factory thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because um, especially when it comes to reproductive health and whatnot, too. That's also like
Oh, that's
a
true. Yeah.
touching subject when it comes to our culture, where they don't really believe, or I wouldn't say believe, but definitely different like pro-life versus pro-choice
Mhm.
in that regard, and sometimes too like we see it, or sometimes culture sees it that having kids is a blessing, and that's what it means to be a family of having children. And that's always the big question that all the titas, all the titos, grandmas and grandpas and parents even just ask. It's like, oh, when are you gonna have a baby? When are you gonna have a kid? Or yeah, and that's always the one question that they always try to hit. And I remember a friend of mine, her well, she's part Filipino, but her in-laws are also Filipino, and they have one kid right now. And she was telling me that they were at a party, and I think their kid's fairly young still. I think at the time he was only maybe 2 or 3, and they were already asking like, when's the next one? When are you gonna have another? And she's just like, yeah, slow down here.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I know I've talked about it before, but I just hate that question. Because it's like, I don't know. It's like the people that want to have kids and are trying for kids and like don't have any issues, the ones that are like, yeah, actually we are about to have another baby. They're never the ones that get the question. It's always the ones that are like on the complete opposite end. You know what I mean? Like the ones struggling with infertility, the ones struggling with miscarriages, like the ones that are just like, I do not want children. Like, that's not for me. That's not my lifestyle. Whatever the case may be. Those are always the ones, like the ones that are most sensitive to the question. They're the ones that always get hounded the most. And I'm like, man, God, like read the room. You know what I mean? Like just stop asking the question. It's never good to ask the question. Ugh, hate it. But
right now my mom is asking me like, oh yeah, when are you gonna find someone? I want a grandbaby soon. I was like, I've been busy.
Yeah.
I have other things to worry about.
Yeah. No, thank you. I don't know. Maybe it's just because like I know that you have such a big heart, and I feel like you're such a good advocate for people, like for the kids with special needs and like the people that can't always speak up for themselves. I feel like you're really, really good at giving them a voice. Do you think that's maybe why you kind of went into that realm, because you saw so many of those around you that weren't able to have a voice, and so you're like, I want to be an advocate for them and like give them that option that we never had?
I think so, because before, probably when I was younger, I didn't really realize it. I think it was something that came a bit more, I guess, naturally, without me really thinking much about it. And, as I got older, and I think all the choices that just somehow led me to where I am now, I think probably unconsciously, that is what I felt, because I think part of it too was my own personal experiences and knowing how difficult it can be when, just trying to voice out different things or different feelings, and it's hard not to.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess being able to just provide a place, and also maybe part of me being a bit chaotic, that sometimes I'm just nosy, and I like to know what's going on in people's life. But I think, the more I continue working on it, like working in this field and just exploring like different options, I think like I definitely do want to help, as I said, advocate people who do have a more difficult time of expressing themselves, or trying to process, even just processing through like what they're feeling and processing through all their thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Can
be difficult, but definitely just having someone like there for help for it, it could be a godsend. Just at least having some support. For sure.
That's so cool. I'm so proud of you. Look at you doing big things.
Oh, thank you.
I love that. And that's why, I don't know, I feel like that's what I was like, dude, I gotta get you on my podcast, because I feel like people like you are the real, like, y'all are the real OGs, Because you're actually, like, you're doing something so valuable, and you're doing something of worth, and you're actually, like, making an impact. Like, you are absolutely changing the world for people around you and the people that are in your circle. And so I don't know, I just think that's, like, the coolest thing ever. And like I kind of said in was that 2 episodes ago, I think, when I talked about the Legacy Museum, which you actually went to with us down in Alabama. And the jars of dirt, man, they hit me so hard. And I was like, look at all these unknowns. Like, I don't know. And I was like, they have an amazing story. Like, they're like, they just have so much to share. All of these, quote unquote, normal average people that actually are well beyond average and normal. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like you're one of those people. You're just these little, like, diamonds in the rough. And I'm like, dude, let's tap into that. Like, let's get your story out there, I don't know.
Oh, so sweet. You're so sweet. Thank you. I try.
When I say, like, be a decent human being, like, that is you. I'm really saying, like, be a Reggie, But, all right. So another very influential, impactful person was Jose Rizal. He's going to be our little heritage spotlight today for this episode for the Filipino culture. So he was, and this is what kills me, this is why I'm doing this episode. I had never even heard of him before, which granted, maybe that's not saying too much, but he was literally like the MLK Jr. of the Philippines. Like, he was insanely impactful. And so a little backstory on him. He was born 1861, died 1896, so he was only 35 years old, very young. And patriot, physician, they call him a polymath. I had to Google that term, I'm not gonna lie. He was just, like, stellar in everything he did, like, very, very, very well educated in a variety of subjects. Apparently he spoke 22 different languages.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, oh, dang. I
know, I'm like, how is that? I don't know. Like, how do you even do that young, on top of everything else he did? But yeah, he was a huge icon for the Philippine nationalist movement. And so, growing up, he was the son of a very well-off landowner. He was educated in Manila and at the University of Madrid. He was a medical student, and then he committed himself to the reform of Spanish rule in the Philippines, though he never advocated for Philippine independence. Most of his writing was done in Europe, where he lived between 1882 and then 1892. In 1887, he published his first novel, which translates to The Social Cancer. And I didn't know this. Our friend Erica told us this. Apparently, and like what she got from her parents, apparently in that generation, every Filipino in high school, I think she said her senior year, they had to read this book.
Oh.
Like, yeah, she said that they were required to read it. And I'm like, hold back up. Like, yeah, I guess every single senior, it was mandatory reading. And then I think they had like a test or something on it. But yeah, this book, The Social Cancer, was like basically their constitution, sort of, if you will. Like, it was just this canon text that I guess every Filipino had to read. So that's pretty crazy. But yeah, it outlines like basically the evils of Spanish rule in the Philippines. So it went a lot into colonization and things of that nature. And then he did write a sequel in 1891, which loosely translates to The Reign of Greed. And that's what established his reputation as basically the leading spokesperson of the Philippine reform movement. And then he put out an annotated edition of, can you say that title?
I think it's the Sucesos. De las Islas Filipinas. So I think it's like the successes of the Philippine Islands.
Thank you. I cannot speak Spanish or any other language besides English, so very boring. Thank you. Thank you for your assist there. But yeah, and so he put that annotated edition out, hoping to show that the native people of the Philippines did have a long and lustrous history before the coming of the Spaniards. And then he just became the leader of the propaganda movement, put out a ton of newspaper articles that were published all over. His political program included integration of the Philippines as a province of Spain, representation in the Cortes, which was the Spanish parliament, the replacement of Spanish friars by Filipino priests, freedom of assembly and expression, and equality of Filipinos and Spaniards before the law. Again, all of this at such a young age. Like, it's absolutely crazy. So this is where it gets sad. In 1892, he comes back to the Philippines. He founded a nonviolent reform society in Manila. Then he was deported. He remained in exile for the next 4 years. In 1896, is this
Katipunan?
It sounds so cool when you say it. So that was a Filipino nationalist secret society, and they revolted against Spain. Rizal didn't actually have any connections to that organization, but he was still arrested and tried for sedition by the military. They put on like an excuse of a trial, found him guilty, and then he was publicly executed by a firing squad in Manila. And everything that I've read about him, they all refer to it as like a martyrdom. And yeah, and then that convinced the Filipinos that there was no alternative to independence, essentially, from Spain. And on the eve of his execution, while he was in his jail cell, Rizal wrote My Last Farewell, and that's known as like an absolute masterpiece poem. And this part was really cool too. So I found this in the Library of Congress. So he wrote that, that poem, and it basically just describes his love for his home, for his country, the unity of the Philippine people, and his hope for independence. And 6 years later, after the U.S. purchased the Philippines from Spain, and I guess we were debating, like, hey, what is Philippine government going to look like, whatever, Congressman Henry A. Cooper shared the poem, My Last Farewell. He shared that poem on the floor of Congress, and he said, quote, "On the night before his death, he wrote a poem. I will read it that the House may know what were the, quote, last thoughts of this, quote, pirate, this barbarian, this savage of a race incapable of civilization. How many of the civilized Caucasian slanderers of his race could ever be capable of thoughts like these, which on that awful night poured from the soul of the martyred Filipino? Search the long and bloody roll of the world's martyred dead, and where, on what soil, under what sky, did tyranny ever claim a nobler victim?" Unquote. I know, right? Isn't that, I'm like, damn, that is the ultimate compliment. You know what I mean? I'm like, that just shows you how good the writing was, that literally a deathbed poem could become that influential years and years and decades later. It's still considered a masterpiece of 19th century Spanish verse. So it's, and people don't even, like, people like me, like, I've never even heard of this guy before. And that's why I'm like, how, I don't know, our educational system failed us. But that's why I'm just so excited to do episodes like these every month and just kind of capture some of these unknown heroes, to be dramatic, but honestly, that's kind of what they are, that you otherwise maybe never would have heard of, So.
Right, that is true. And there's this website actually we use, it's called News to You, and they always talk about, like, what the month celebrate, and they did talk about Asian American Pacific Islander Month, and I remember it honored all these different Asian Americans or Asians or Pacific Islanders that done great things, and I wondered if they ever talked about Rizal, because obviously since, like, I've heard about Rizal from my family, my parents, and what he's done for the Philippines, not so much to, like, this level, but that's really cool. But it would be, I don't know, I think I see why we call it Pinoy pride, or I see why people get so happy or excited sometimes just to hear, like, that there's, like, that they see a Filipino or see someone, like, on screen, or some, like, that they're getting recognition for the great that they've done.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and honestly, that could be with any ethnicity, especially when it comes to, like, representation, especially with, like, in movies, social media, all the acting world and everything that's so predominantly a specific ethnicity. Just to have that representation definitely feels good.
Yeah. No, I I mean, you know this, right? Like, I'm a huge proponent of representation, because now I'm like, all right, my daughter's gonna grow up, like, there are no Korean princesses, there are no, there are no Korean superheroes yet, like, there aren't. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic, probably another episode we could do. But yeah, I mean, some people, so that's actually a perfect segue into my next point. Some people, like Rizal, yes, he's amazing, right? Some people really, really, really idolize Rizal to the level of religious beliefs. And so I kind of let my true crime culty nature take over here. And there are actually some ethnic religious groups in the Philippines that believe in the divinity of Jose Rizal. And so some of them believe that he is still alive and will return to deliver his followers from poverty and oppression. Some have identified him as God. Some of them have identified him as like the second, or like the Filipino Christ, as they say. Yeah, and some like see him as the god of the pre-Spanish Malay religion. So Rizalist cults. And I guess the largest group is called the Banner of the Race Church. Those all kind of synthesize Roman Catholic rituals and images with traditional Filipino elements. But from what I read, there's up to about 300,000 rural people that adhere to these cults. So that's kind of interesting. So.
Oh, that's cool. I wonder if they ever go to Manila, because I know that there's like a huge monument in Manila for Rizal.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, it's like I don't remember what part of Manila. I unfortunately did not get to see it when I went to the Philippines, but there is a huge monument. I'm not sure if it was probably where he was executed, or if it's just, I'm not entirely sure where.
Or maybe like where he went to school or something.
Yeah, but apparently it's like located at the western end of Rizal Park. It contains the mortal remains of him.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's probably like a shrine, because Catholics do that too. They believe that like my mom tried to teach me about this and I kind of blacked her out a little bit. So there's like levels of sacredness to the remains. So there's like, and the very loose explanation here, but like a level 1, or like the highest level is their bones, their physical remnants. The next level is like anything that they touched, and then like the next level is anything that someone else, if they prayed to that saint or to that person and then a miracle happened, then that article of clothing or whatever it was, then that has a level of sacredness to it. And so apparently, hundreds of years later, all of these little, bone remnants or articles of clothing or anything that they touched, these are now enshrined in different places. And so you can make these pilgrimages to these saintly artifact shrines, essentially. And then if you pray to that saint or to that person and then touch that article, then miracles also happen with you if you're lucky. I don't know. It's like a whole thing. So I wonder if they do that, if they have like designated pilgrimages to his burial site. They have to.
I believe that. I mean, that sounds, because I know with we have some of like little we have an altar in the house where we have like pictures of Jesus, Mother Mary. We have like a little, statue where we hang all the rosaries and everything. So I feel like I feel like they'd have something for him there too. Man,
that would be cool to see though.
Well, if you ever go to the Philippines and go to Manila, his monument's right there.
Heck yeah. Alrighty. Before we go though, if you had any piece of advice for a Filipino, or just anyone, honestly, because your story is very relatable, I feel like, do you have any piece of advice for people that are maybe growing up in this type of family dynamic where they don't really have that voice for themselves, whether that's, they're kind of forced to keep the peace with the family, or maybe they have some mental health issues that they're struggling with, but they don't feel like they can speak up about it. Do you have any advice for them?
Well, one, whatever you are feeling or thinking, it is valid. Your family may say otherwise, but you are entitled to how you feel and what you think. No one can really tell you it's right or wrong except for yourself. And definitely reach out to anyone. It doesn't have to be a professional. It could just be someone that you trust, a friend, maybe another family member, whoever. But just know that there are people out there too that definitely may be able to help. And it can be scary for sure, because it could be different from what you've been taught for majority of your life. But people are always growing, and this doesn't have to stop you either.
Oh, I love that. Dude, you're gonna be so good in your field. Like, you're gonna be so good. Oh, I can't. I'm just like so happy that people have you. What have you been listening to or reading these days with your, substantial free time as you're working and finishing grad school and doing everything else?
Well, honestly, I'm probably behind in the game, but I finally had time to listen to the audiobook of Jennette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died.
It's on my list to read. I haven't read it yet either. It's good?
I enjoy it. It definitely, I didn't feel the way I thought I would feel, or at least I thought I'd be a bit more emotional, at least sadness-wise, but I think I looked at it more as like a trainee therapist perspective, and I felt anger.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think probably parts of it I could relate to. Obviously not a whole lot, but I will say after listening to it, it definitely made me think of a question for myself of how I would feel if a parent passed, and how I would process those emotions as well. For sure. My next one on the list is crying in Mart. I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
it is on hold because I'm waiting for the library to release it. So
it's
maybe
so good.
For the 6 weeks I have to wait, maybe I'll be ready by then. Maybe I won't be.
I don't know if you're ever going to be emotionally prepared for that, but it's so good. I think you're going to love it. It's also going to make you very hungry, because she talks, because that's like a whole piece of it is the food culture and the food aspect. And so she talks very explicitly about all these different types of food and cooking and all that. And she explains all the food so well. And so the whole time I was reading it, I was like, man, I'm hungry. Like, I want this food that she's talking about. But yeah, you're going to love it. It's so good. All right. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Hopefully you had fun. I had so much fun. I love hearing your stories, and I love hearing your take on Filipino culture and your experience growing up with that. Hopefully I get you on an episode again sometime soon.
I'd love to. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys. With that being said, you know the drill. Make good choices. Be a decent human being. Be a Reggie. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself. And I will catch y'all next time. Okay, bye.